Welcome to Beyond Names. I'm Dr. Habib. This is a space for spiritual seekers and soulful misfits, for the curious and the committed, for those grounded in a tradition, and for those who aren't sure what they believe. Whether you call the divine God, Yahweh, Allah, Elohim, Hashem, Brahman, Great Spirit, higher power, or you're still searching for language that fits, you are welcome here. Together, we'll explore the intersection of spirituality and daily life, the wisdom of many traditions, and the ways we return to our true selves, to our source, to the light that each of us carry within. I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin with introduction of our conversation partner for this episode, Cathy Antunes. Cathy Antunes had a successful career in executive sales with three Fortune 500 companies. Now she is a radio host, a writer, and she serves on the boards of local civic nonprofits. She's a fan of the public good, facilitating local debates and town halls with candidates and public officials. She also writes a blog on Substack, and her guest columns have appeared in numerous Florida and national publications. We met through the University of Sufism. Cathy also holds a Master's Divinity in Ministry from the University of Sufism, where she also served on the faculty. To learn more about Cathy and her work, please visit CathyAntunesSubstack.com. Her radio show is called The Detail, and it is on WSLR, and that is at WSLR.org. Cathy, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, the way I ask conversation partners to introduce themselves is by
Mhm.
telling their spiritual story. So, would you please, of course, to the extent that you
Ah,
feel comfortable,
hmm.
yeah,
That might take a while, but
as you
that's
like, you can take as much time or as little time
okay.
as you feel.
Um, so I got to start with I am the granddaughter of Irish immigrants. All of my grandparents are from Ireland. So my parents were first generation Americans from Irish immigrants who just were so grateful to come to this country.
Mhm.
And so I was raised Irish Catholic. And I have to say, my husband is Brazilian, and I joked with him when we were dating because he would go to church because he wanted to meet girls. And so I know. But he was sort of like the Easter Sunday, Christmas, and we were at Mass every week. We would kind of joke on Christmas because the parking lot was full and it was hard to find a parking space. Um, so, so I was really raised by very devoted parents in their faith. And then um, I had an experience when I had my first child, which is actually quite an emotional experience when I bring it up. But it was around the time when he was supposed to be baptized. And I had never really felt in my heart that this idea of original sin was the reality.
Mhm.
And my ex-husband, he's actually also Irish, and the whole like Protestant Catholic, he had a Protestant mom and a Catholic dad, and it was a real source of conflict for them when they were dating. That their parents were also immigrants. So he was uncomfortable with baptism and Catholicism, and for understandable reasons. And
Mhm.
I didn't, in my heart, I didn't really think it was needed. I just
Mhm.
couldn't believe that this baby was um, born in sin. So one morning, he was around 3 months old, and I just decided I'm just going to play with him, you know, because there's always things to do when you're a new mom. But I
Yeah.
decided I'm just gonna spend some time with him. And what happened was like this veil was lifted and I got to experience everything was connected. He and
Mm.
I were connected. The world was one. And it was an experience of ecstasy. It was bliss. And I knew in a way that I knew in my head that
Mm.
he was not born in sin, but this was different. This was tasting it. This was my heart. And so um, it was so amazing and so beautiful. And it was shocking that I
Mhm.
was sort of like, okay, okay, I've had enough now. You know, I wasn't used to that. And in Sufism, we would say I didn't have the container to hold
Yeah.
it. You know, it freaked me out. Even though I got it, I'm like, this is God, you know, and and I was being shown something that was the real truth. So it was far more, like, people say, it was more real than than our everyday life. This I knew was the truth. So I kind of pulled myself, I was like kind of drowning and I wanted to get myself out of it. So I did come back and I
Mm.
just was like, it changed my experience of the theology, but and the teaching, but I was just like, what happened? You know, what happened to me?
Yeah.
And and I'm like, I want that to be my reality.
Mm.
And I knew that I knew that I wanted to find a way to access that. I wanted to learn about what happened. And I think growing up too, I was very much listening to stories in mass about the Bible and the prophets and Jesus and Alaihi Wasallam, all of these amazing, holy people.
Mhm.
And I'm like, where are they now? Like, are we really without any holy people now? Like, is it, I just felt like there's more,
Yeah.
you know. So after that experience, I started searching. And it was interesting because I was shortly after that moved to New York City and I saw Marianne Williamson on public access. She was not well known, but she was
Mm.
talking about things that I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That I've
Mm.
always thought that. And so she was talking about A Course in Miracles. And at that time, those books were sold in New York out of somebody's home, a brownstone somewhere. So I found out where to get them and I went and I got them. And I studied A Course in Miracles probably a good 10 years
Mm.
and then kind of transitioned to Unity Church. And um, for me, those paths were really helpful, but they only took me so far. Like I felt
Mm.
like I was in heading in the right direction, but
Yeah.
but it didn't take me all the way. And then, I'm from New York and I had moved down here to Sarasota. I had been a military spouse. My ex was in the service doing medical, scholarship and payback time. So we moved quite a bit. And when I moved to Sarasota, my I was calling on clients, physicians in my sales career, and one of my doctors I called on, we got to be friendly. She was into alternative medicine as well as
Mm.
allopathic medicine, and she became
Mm.
my doctor. And she said to me, we talked about spirituality, and she said, I found something you're going to love. You're going to love. You have to come to this workshop. And so it was like September, it was like a 3-day workshop, September 8th to September 10th of 2001, or September 7th to September 9th, 2001. And so I went, and
Yeah.
it was a Sufi workshop. It was called A Taste of the Love. And the practices, I'm like, oh, I feel this in my heart, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, this will take me all the way, you know.
Mm,
And I think for, on a spiritual path, it's often like that, right? You
yeah.
just it clicks. And so I knew that this would take me all the way to back to that place that I
Mm,
had felt before.
mm-hmm.
And it was these were Sufi practices, which is the esoteric Islam,
Yeah.
right? The inner, the outer and the inner, but emphasis on the heart. So, it was a great workshop. I met one of my major teachers, Selima Edelstein, and I was just like, okay, this this is great. And I had done a lot of workshops before. This for me was very different. And then on Tuesday, September 11th, you
Mm,
know, um, that was a big day for anybody in this country.
yeah.
But I had a lot of family in New York City.
Mm,
My brother worked at World Trade 4. And it was funny because that summer before 9/11, and I think New Yorkers are like this, I had never been to the World Trade Towers, and I was visiting, it was July 4th weekend, and I said to my kids, let's go, to the World Trade Center. So it's like something inside me, I was being prodded to go. And so we did. And so that event was very palpable for my children too, because they had
mm,
they had been to the towers just 2 months prior to that attack. But I knew, my brother was worked in World Trade 4, and he told me he felt that explosion in the subway, and when he got out, he said he knew something was happening, and he just started walking back uptown, back home.
mm,
My mom was down at she worked for the city in their legal department. She was near City Hall, I guess.
mm-hmm.
And so she was walking uptown on the east side, and we couldn't get in touch with her. I had a sister in Midtown who I called and I said, "You got to turn on your TV." She didn't know what was happening.
Mm,
Um, a cousin who worked at Goldman Sachs, and um, my sister-in-law worked at Goldman, and they, was very close to, they could see out their window. So that event was obviously traumatic and for the country. But it was like God had said, he had shown me the inner reality of those teachings right before an event that, had I not had that experience ahead of time, I
mm-hmm.
certainly could have um, been resistant, to Sufism or to Islam, to those teachings. But it
Yeah.
just showed, it was such a lesson for me. And there's there's the pure truth of a teaching, which all religions at their core, um, there's so much truth, right? And we agree on so much more than we disagree. But then there's what people do with it, right?
Right.
And there's how people make mistakes with it, or how they twist it, and how they create cultural identities that they slap on top of uh, a message.
Right.
So I came to this teaching that has just been a wonderful opening for me, um, grounding. It's given me this ability to embrace practices that that cultivate an inner connection with our creator. And we're all going to do that. I mean, if a lot God had wanted to make one religion, he could have done that. It's
Right.
one of the lovely things the Quran has to say is, there's variety in the creation, that you might know each other, that you might learn from each other, that and that, one thing about our creator is there's just endless variety, right? So so it really changed my perspective, and I love this path. Um, and for me, it's like you can't do these prayers and not be changed. There's a hadith that says when you call, when you take one step toward Allah, toward God, he takes 10 toward you. If you go running toward him, or if you go walking toward him, he comes running toward you. And yeah, that fierce love of a mother, which I experience, when you have a baby, it sort of like blows your heart wide open. You just, as a woman, it's just very physical, the experience, but it takes you to a different level. And I'm like, well, if I feel that, right, about my child, how
Yeah.
much more does does God feel for for his creation? So, and
Mm.
I found all that in Sufism. So, yeah, so that I'm very grateful for the teaching, and it's sad to see, and I'm grateful for my upbringing, for the beauty and the truth that my parents gave me, you know.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of my story. I could talk more, but that's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
You certainly went somewhere I never anticipated.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Sometimes I think I should put on my bio somewhere like I talk about politics and religion, and I make a very polite dinner guest, right? Because, it's like we're warned, oh, don't talk politics or religion. But really, these are pretty core topics, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
shape our lives. So we need to talk. We need to talk about them.
indeed. I'll confess that I've been so honestly angered by Islamophobia um, in
Yeah.
this in my family, in this country,
Hmm.
um, that been um, I've always had this weird relationship with the I don't know if what the right word, relationship's not the right word, but this how do I hold the events of 9/11 um, and hold all of the pain uh, that we have experienced individually and collectively around such an event, and at the same time stand up for this is not the truth of my religion.
Hmm.
What you're doing with this event is really in disservice not only to your own heart and your own soul and your own mind, but it's a disservice to the rest of us when you take something and make it untrue, you know. Uh, and,
Mm.
and in what you're talking about, you had this wonderful experience of truth with a capital T
Hmm.
with your son, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You got a sense of reality with a capital R.
Yeah. It was, yeah. And it was like shocking in the best way, right?
Yeah.
But the idea that, we we build barriers, and shield ourselves actually from the power of love, right? We get wounded, and if you look at babies, if you're with a baby, right? Even if you don't have that kind of experience, but there's just a openness and a joy. And one of the things that, again, as a mother, there's this nature nurture um, question, and I'm sure both are important, but I can tell you that that baby has their configuration of being, right? Like there's a way that God has put all these different qualities and attributes in that child, um, that as a mother, they don't have language, but I knew like he knows what he wants, right?
Yeah.
He can't communicate it to me um, by talking, but there's a way that they have their way of
Mm-hmm.
being in the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's them from the start, like very observant or very active. Like you just see this and you realize like I did not that is him, right? That
Right.
was not something that I put there. I mean, that's just his nature. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm trying to get back now to what you're talking about. So people, um, you see what happens with a child, and they carry. I was just reading something because there are people who have the gift of clairvoyance, or they can see more esoteric realities. And this author, he was talking about being in London and seeing all these like 5 or 6 year olds going to the playground, and that the light of their hearts was just like a sun, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like these
Yeah.
kids just have this sunshine.
Yeah.
And that gets covered over, right? As
Mm-hmm.
we become adults, which by the way, one of the things I love too in the stories of creation and Adam and Eve, and the inner meanings in the Sufi tradition. But if God knew they were going to make that mistake, right?
Right.
So it's like the mistake was part of the plan. Like the physical world is tough. And as a spiritual being in a body, the trap is identifying with the world. That's just a trap that when you come in as a child, you're not identified, and you have to learn how to navigate the world, and your parents take care of you and teach you and all of that. And inevitably you have to unlearn a lot of it. Um, and so when you see people, uh, one of the things our guide, Sidi, Muhammad Al Jamal was his name, and we were privileged to spend time with him.
Yeah.
But he would say, explode the mountain of your existence. Like, like with Islam, what happened to me in that moment was the small Cathy was not, I wasn't operating from the small self, and I wasn't seeing, and my son didn't have one yet. He didn't have that small self. He was in unity with God.
Yeah.
And we create our identities, which you kind of have to. I mean, you're in a body, you're in the world, and you need one,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
But people take that. You look at bombers of 9/11 or corrupt politicians, right? Who
Right.
think, or oligarchs. It's like he who has the most toys wins at the end of that's not the truth, but it's a trap of the world. And so what happens with these people doing abominable things is they've just become so covered over and so identified with uh, you know the world, with their thoughts about how things are going to have to be. And my way is the right way, and your way is the wrong way. And my
Yeah.
people, and it's so much making separation. And it's very human, but it when it gets taken to that, um, you know, the evil that happens in the world,
Mhm.
um, it's obviously really sad. And I think for people of faith, regardless of your faith, to be always turning it to God, to the God we all pray to, and just surrendering the grief, surrendering the emotion, and then being asking to be guided. Okay, what do I do now? What's my part in this? How do I contribute to a better world? Um, and and all of us are needed, you know, and
Yeah.
it's a lesson for all of us. We're not separate from it. We may not be doing it, but we're participating in this world, in this collective reality that we're making. And so we have a part to play, and without losing heart, we have
Yeah.
our own practice to, and we have our families to take care of and our own lives to take care of. So not to be overwhelmed, but to do your part. It can be a lot. It feels like a lot, certainly certain events and what's happening now in Iran, and it is heavy, and it's important that we do that work.
Hmm. I want to come back to the idea of doing your part and doing the work that you're mentioning, but I also want to circle back to this experience that I might use the word spiritual awakening.
Mhm. Yeah.
When I think of those experiences in my life, I think of them as experiences of the unity, um, of the oneness, like the lack
Mhm.
of separation between anything, like the lack of separation between humanity and God, but also the lack of separation between humanity and the rest of humanity.
Yeah.
Like just true oneness, where
Yeah.
where there is only one, there is no I, as in there is no self, and that oneness is a an all-encompassing love that is truly beyond any of our ability to even fully perceive, uh, to understand, to express just the one love, the unitive love.
Yeah.
Um, those are just some of the words that I would use to describe. So what I'm wanting to do is make a connection between that and, what is ours to do. And I can't help but think that for many of us, I don't know that everybody has those kind of experiences. I don't know that everybody find themselves um, seeking in such a way that they say, "Oh, I'm going to embark on doing these spiritual practices that I want to um, purposefully engage in this purification of the outer and the purification of the ego self, and that my intention is to um, achieve a state of higher consciousness, or maybe not achieve. It's not a word I like to use in association with spirituality, but
Mm.
what I'm saying is
Mhm.
that a long-winded way of saying that I don't know that everybody has that experience, right? That my neighbor Jane and my neighbor Joe, they might not have the experience of a unitive love or of the one love, or their conception of God might not be that.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if you have anything to offer, you know, those that haven't tasted that in that way, um, or an invitation or
Mhm. You know, you see, we're very, as human beings in a physical experience like we are, um, there's a lot of focus on the outer, on form, and there's a couple of things your question brings up. One is that most people want to be happy, right?
yeah.
They're looking, m most people, at least on some level, are going to be wanting to have some joy in their life. Um, and I have friends who are adamantly um, agnostic or atheist.
Hmm.
But what I see them doing in their life is community, is beauty, is truth. You know, in that creation story, and it was always so. It struck me when I was reading them, read the Quran a couple times or a number of times now, that the idea of man being made in the image of God, same idea in the Bible. And what is that? Well, in Sufism, it's the qualities of God, right? It is peace, mercy, justice, freedom, beauty, um, all kinds of beautiful qualities, friendship, um, love. So we carry these qualities, and there are people who claim to be super spiritual, and maybe they're not necessarily engaged in those embodying those qualities. And then there are those who say, no, and may have very understandable reasons for rejecting religion or the ideas of God. There's a phrase, Jesus, save me from your followers. Like, there are ways that what people do with a teaching or with a religion can be a lot about their own wounding and not
Hmm.
necessarily really the teaching.
Hmm.
And so, I'm like I say, I see people who say that they're not wanting God or following God, but then what they're doing in their life is just full of those qualities. It's full of
Hmm.
beauty, it's full of love, it's full of peace, it's full of care for other people. So um I'm trying to get, but now what was your question again? I look at that, and if you're following your heart, because again, we come in, humans are lit from within with a divine connection. You are not beating your own heart, you know? There
Yeah.
is a power that is, Jesus, Isa, alayhi wa salam, said, in him we live and move and have our being. And that is what a good description of what I felt and what I experienced, that unity. Like,
Yeah.
your existence, your talents, yes, you studied, yes, but the aptitudes that you've been given, the opportunities that have come to you, your breathing, your breath, your heartbeat,
Yeah.
so much of that is not driven by you, you know. It's a gift. And so Allah catches in his net whom he will, right? Like, Sufism isn't going to be for everybody. For some people, it's going to be nature. For some people, it's going to be, yoga. For some people, it's going to be Catholicism. And if God had wanted to make us all the same religion, he could have done that, and he didn't, you know.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like if you trust, if people are connecting within themselves to that source, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and to the extent that people look outside themselves for that through substances or
Hmm.
money or power, it's not gonna be fulfilling, because that's not where it is.
Yeah. A couple of things that I'm just gonna repeat what I and synthesize what I
Yeah.
got out of that response is that part of um, the invitation, I think, for anybody, for any listener that might not have had those tastings of unitive love is
Mm,
to follow your heart, to follow your own
yeah.
heart. Yes. And then
Yeah.
part of that is connect to source within you, um,
Mhm.
in and within your own within the beauty of your own qualities
Yeah.
of what is within you. So
Right.
those are the and just to sort of pare it down into two little uh, and
Yeah. The power that's beating your heart
you know
is has enlivened you. If you connect with your own being and look for that joy,
yeah,
um, it shows up. And I think most people actually have, maybe they haven't had that kind of experience I've described, but they've experienced joy, you know.
or
So
they've held a baby
yeah, right. And
or
you're
a
just
puppy
example.
or
Right. You follow your bliss, right?
or
It's just
stood on a
example of that.
mountaintop.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, or you've planned a garden and you planted a garden, or you figured out a really cool math problem. I
Yeah,
mean, science is a really great manifestation of divinity. From where I am, it's like, my gosh, how does all this work? Just the fact that you and I can talk to each other like this and it's being
right.
recorded and all that. Um, yeah, so there's just so many avenues that lead us back there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, one of the main reasons that I wanted to have a conversation with you is
Mm.
I wanted to speak to this intersection of faith and spirituality and activism, politics, social justice, because it seems that we're living in times that are especially challenging, um, and especially
Yeah.
intense. I mean, whether it's what's happening in Iran and Lebanon right now, whether it's what's happening in Palestine, whether it's Venezuela or the people who are starving in Cuba right now, whether it's within the United States and so many people being detained and their rights not being honored and
Yeah.
or being subjects to violence by ICE or and the list goes on, right?
Yep.
We look across the world, Somalia, Sudan, and
Mhm.
um, so can you speak to how do we engage um, in the ways that we can um,
Mhm.
that do in fact reflect this commitment to the beauty that the divine has put within us.
Yeah. Um, there's a teaching. You talk about the oneness and and that we are all connected. Like what Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of my brothers. that you do unto me. Like that was a song when I was growing up, that that person is not separate from you or from Jesus. And if you're doing that to them, you're doing it to him. Uh, and in the Quran, it talks about, you know, to kill one person is like killing all of humanity. So it's really clear that we're not to be doing that. And at the same time, you do see times when there's persecution, like Hitler, right?
Mm.
Um, when people are being uh, persecuted, tortured, mistreated, um, that that fighting that is an allowed response. You know, like
Mm.
sometimes you do pick up a sword, but to pick it up for oil is not, you know, that's that's not um, that's not right. You know, what do people do? Well, I think we're seeing in the United States, and you know, God gives, there's so much mercy and time that it takes a lot of time, I think, for the collective um, people, because we're living our lives, we're raising our children, and and often for an idea to penetrate that some people will think is very obvious, but it takes time
Mm.
for the whole group to really understand and see it. And unfortunately, it often takes pain for people to understand and see it. And that can be very frustrating, right? Um,
Mhm.
so what do you do? You know, I look at what's going on in the United States is when you have a certain proportion of people who stand in truth, right? When it doesn't have to be everybody, but when there are enough people who who are not in who embrace their hearts. Courage is the French word for heart is cœur. Courage is from the heart. You know,
Mm.
when you're and the teaching in Sufism and Islam is you only surrender to God, right?
Mhm.
And and the first commandment in all three Abrahamic religions is, I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt not have false gods before me. What does that mean? You know, you don't put money before God. You don't put um, power before God. You you stand to really whatever your faith, to pray with sincerity and ask to be guided for your next step
Mhm.
is a radical thing to do. You know, it really is the heart of any activism. And you know, activism doesn't necessarily mean I'm on TV leading a protest, right?
Mhm.
It's a decision inside in every aspect of your life to just follow the truth and the love, right? And peace and mercy and justice. I mean, you know, there's a balance here. The symbol for justice is, you know, a woman blindfolded holding a scale, that things are weighed, right?
Mhm.
We don't live in a black and white world. It'd be a lot easier if we did. We don't live in a world when everybody's the same color, the same religion, right? And there's and situations have to be measured. It can be difficult. But to just stand with, you know, the quality of truth, al-haq, the truth of God, and ask for God to show you what the truth. We all have our idea of what the truth is, but to be open to, okay, please show me what the truth is here. Please change my heart to understand whatever is blocking me from understanding. And then moving forward in compassion and courage and peace. And I think we're seeing this. If you look at what happened in Minnesota and the murder of two American citizens who were exercising their constitutional right to say, no, I am not on board with this. And the response of the country. Now, it's sad that it has to get to that point, you know, but it's simply, you know, it's just like the collective is saying this is acceptable. And yes, there are ways we've been asleep, and we need to wake up. We need to wake up. We need to wake up. What is this country? What are we doing with our tax money? How are we impacting other countries? You know, what is the real motivation for what our government's doing? Who are we putting in charge? You know? Um, but I think that there is a collective vibe, energy, right? We're all really made of light, electrons, atoms. But when we stand in that truth,
Mhm.
things change. Like you're doing your work on an inner level, talking with neighbors, um, looking at your assumptions, being willing to question, being willing to learn. Like when Jesus gave his Sermon on the Mount, in the Aramaic, it's been mistranslated that blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. That's not what the Aramaic means. It's blessed are the teachable. Blessed are the teachable, for they will inherit the earth. The minute we stop acting like we have it all figured out
Mhm.
and we're willing for our connection to cultivate our connection with our higher power and to have that animate us and move us, things shift. It's not a small thing. If we're all doing that, the world's going to be on the right track. And the other thing that I've seen with our cultural zeitgeist in the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years, is a disrespect for education.
Mhm.
Um, and and also like an anti college education versus blue collar, like we make these separations regarding
Mhm.
what people know and how smart they are and all that, but it's kind of used as a way to downgrade the teachings of people who have something to tell us that's important, right?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
I'll give you an example. I studied history, which doesn't make me an expert, but it means I've spent some time, right, with the topic. And I was engaged in a conversation online, uh, and someone was like, "Well, what are you saying? You're smarter than me." And I'm like, "No, I'm not saying that." Um, and when I have someone come fix my AC, I live in Florida, so I need my AC to live here, right? It's the only reason people live here now is we have AC. So it's always been a guy. So a man comes to take care of my AC, and he knows things I don't know, and I need his knowledge. I actually need it for me to have a comfortable life. And I
Yeah.
do respect that this person has studied something and understands something, and I am benefiting from it, and I pay that person, and and I'm not saying to him, "Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think you're smarter than me?" I understand that, okay, there's been an investment of time and expertise, but it's the same with this political stuff. I think we
Yeah.
really and you need to be careful about who you're taking information from, and and also be respectful that, yeah, there are people who dedicated their lives to understanding diplomacy, to understanding why certain countries do what they do, to understanding how to put water systems in place. We need all of it. And it's important. And I'm getting back to that original sin idea that, so bear with me. Um, the beautiful thing for me, Sufism resonated for me because it's a path that teaches you that you came in with a beautiful soul, and you're a creation of God. And yeah, it's your job the world's going to wound you, and
Mm.
the unlearning of that and the coming into your connection as an adult who can navigate the world but stays connected, stays aligned with God, is like the challenge of this world. That's the victory in the world. It's not how much money, it's not how big your house is, it's not what your position is, right? God looks into our hearts and sees where we're at. So in the political propaganda of the world, or the social jockeying for position, it's not like that at all. And we need to guard against being sucked in by that,
Mhm.
and appreciating what each person brings to the table. Um, because we need to transform our country, our world. Um, we've been led into I mean, one of the things that comforts me is God's in charge. No
Mhm.
matter what's going on, God's in charge. And nothing's going to happen unless it's permitted. And yes, bad things happen in the world. And if this were the only place, you know, to me, if there was a place we were before, we're here, we're going on somewhere else. Um, but we're here to learn something. We're here to transform this place. And so um, everybody's important, and everybody's got that connection to make. And if we're all doing that, the world works. It's just, um, but the harshness and the terrors and the things that happen are a result of people making separation, not seeing the humanity in other people, putting money first, putting power first, the otherness. They're this, they're not like me. And you put two little kids together of different, a Palestinian and Israeli little kids, they're gonna play, you know.
Yeah.
So we just need to get back to that in ourselves, and we'll be good. But it is a very tough time right now, and the world needs light. So whatever your light is, to shine that is very important right now.
Yeah. Mm. So again, just to some of the key points,
Yeah.
mm, having respect for each other, um, returning to our innate goodness, the goodness that we carried when we came into the world in our souls and our hearts.
Yeah.
Um, Being careful around how we get information and pairing, pairing that with a consciousness of and respect for expertise, and
Yes.
recognizing where there is expertise and where there is not expertise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's kind
Right.
of just a way of being careful and caring for ourselves as well
Yeah.
as caring for each other, just having this sort of consciousness, this awareness of of people, who they are, what their expertise is, what their motivations are, uh,
Hmm.
and so forth.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I have to emphasize the point that you said about being teachable, that
Yeah.
to be in the world today, there needs to be a level of being of awareness, but also a level of being open uh, to learn uh, and to let go and to allow new information in uh,
Yeah. Your
yeah,
whole life,
your
right?
whole life.
Your whole life. You know, I'm 62 and I'm so grateful to be living in a time of such, you know, technological advancement and so
Right,
much interesting information out there. And and at the same time, there's a lot of deception that we have to be aware of, but
right.
it keeps you young, it keeps you mentally, spiritually fit to
Mm,
recognize, like, the more you realize you don't know is when you know, right? Like, the not knowing is the knowing. Like, God knows everything, and it's our job to be open and learn. um, is a pretty powerful thing, but it also removes arrogance. Like, arrogance is a big trap that
right.
that keeps us from our good. And um, when I say all this stuff, at the same time, like, one of the things I do in my work, and I focus on local government here, is call out corruption.
Mhm,
And it's not about whether the person is good or bad, because I mean, everybody's got that innate goodness. I believe that.
mhm,
But but we're all subject to um, making mistakes. So calling out, to be able to stand in truth, right? To
mhm,
call something out in a way that's just simply about the truth. It's not about whether the person, is good or bad. There's that's God's judgment to make, right?
mhm, mhm,
Um, everybody's a creation of God, but it is our job to look at how our society is functioning. And it is our job to say, yeah, what you're doing with this money over here is is not right. If you're taking care of corporate um, entities, and I mean, they're not people. That should be obvious. But we're in a country right now that's giving corporations the rights of human beings.
mhm,
And the needs of human beings are being subservient to a corporate welfare, like, literally and figuratively. This is insane, right? This is insane. It is not what was imagined by the founders of this country. The country was founded as a cash cow for other powers. It's kind of in our DNA that we have to clean this.
mhm,
The profit motive and all of that, and slavery, using people for your own economic benefit. We haven't cleaned this yet. We've done some, but we
mhm,
haven't cleaned it entirely. And calling it out is critical. And it's not just calling it out for the people whose ancestors had been for their benefit, it's for our benefit. Like, if you're a white person, it is not serving you to ignore what's been done with your brothers and sisters who are people of color, right? So, there's a kind of new agey spirituality, which I think is does a disservice to us, in that it's like, well, I don't want to get my hands dirty spirituality. Well, it's all of us need to be willing to look, right? And be willing to learn, and to be willing to do our part to create a better world. And, the thing for me about Sufism that I like and that I feel is the truth is that it's not about my will. What God has planned for me is so much better, and that's been my experience. That
Hmm.
that when I surrender to God, what's in store for me is better, often better than I could imagine, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and to to call out the ways the society isn't working and to advocate for a just society for all people comes back to you and and serves everybody else. And so there's a way like, oh, you create your own reality. Like on one level, that is, I see the truth in that. Our
Hmm.
attitudes and our the way we are in the world, it does impact in the world. But I got to come back to God's in charge, right? I'm not going to look at that homeless person and go, well, he created his own reality, so I mean, it's really on him, which I think is um there's a way that things get tainted, right? I mean, we're seeing a lot of and having been reared in a very Christian Catholic household, um, we're just seeing a perversion of these values
Hmm.
where it's Jesus was liberal. he he took care of the poor. He
Yeah.
made a pretty big deal about that. Like this is and if you're given these talents and this wealth, which you are not going to take with you, what's it for? You can only have so many things. So anyway, it's something we all have to look at. And so when I say all this stuff, there is a place for the sword of truth. There is a place for calling things out, and you can do it in a way that's clear, in a way that's unifying. Like one of the things I study is dark money locally, and I write about because we've had ridiculous amounts of PAC money for school board elections, right? For
Hmm.
county commission elections, like
Wow.
over $1 million for county commission election. Why? Because this is where fortunes are made in my community, right?
Hmm.
And there are certain people who want to buy our government to get the decisions that they want. And at the end of the day, it's it's like who gave you this opportunity? Who gave you that talent? Who's going to be asking you at the end of your life what you did with it, right? So, yeah, so that I think there's also a role for that
Hmm.
fierceness for truth, fierceness for standing up. And and if again, God made a whole spectrum of personalities and vibes with people. And so some of us are going to be in that fiercer camp, some of us are going to be more gentle, but we just all have to do what we're called to do. And you'll know it when you'll feel it in your heart, right? It'll click. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate one thing you said, which was victory. Victory is not about winning an election or getting, um, like you said, a certain position or
Hmm.
a certain house or a certain
Right.
victory, as you said, is the sense of connection with the divine, maintaining that sense of connection with the divine, maintaining alignment with the divine as you honor yourself and the beauty that's in your own heart, whether that's standing up with a sword of truth or whether that's bringing gently and softly
Hmm.
a an insistence or a an invitation to care for each other, to care for each other with the mercy and the compassion and the kindness and the respect and the dignity that each of us are due.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think dignity is such an important word,
Yeah.
that the human being is, and like one of the awesome, fabulous teachings of Islam and Sufism is, that being made in the image of God, angels bow to God. They don't have free will. I think, and when you're in the presence of God, you're going to obey because he's irresistible, right? If you're in the presence of the divine, this world is different, and the human, at least, in a certain way, we all have free will. We would always talk in school about destiny versus free will because there's also teaching that there's destiny, and but um but because the human being contains all of the qualities of God, because the human being is made in the image of God, the human being is higher than the angels. The angels serve humanity, and it's that the dignity and the honor and the holiness. Like after Rahman, people are familiar with Bismillah, Rahman, or Rahim. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. But one of the next qualities is Al Qudus, the holy. Like
Mm.
human beings are holy. And that's to fully realize your holiness is the victory of this life. And if
Mm.
you're looking at the outer, if you walk into a room and you're thinking that the most important, powerful person in the room is the one, with the big famous name, we have a celebrity culture where, the big famous person is the most important first person or the most powerful person. But I bet if God's looking, if you're seeing with the eyes of Allah, if you're seeing with the eyes of God, and Allah is just God in Arabic, right?
Mhm.
Um, what you're what Allah sees in that room, what God sees is the hearts of the people in the room. And it could be the person bussing tables who is the one with the surrendered heart. And it's that kind of understanding to wipe out the arrogance. In the Bible it says to those much has been given, much will be expected, right? The
Mhm.
talent, the money, the power, we're all going to be asked what we did with it, right? And to appreciate that, not making separation and understanding that busboy might have something to teach you. And he actually could be much farther along in ways that you're not, is humbling, but I think it's also inspiring
Mm.
and important at, a time where we're bombing a country that we don't know much about, that we don't understand. I think most Americans are like, what are we doing? You know, and it's important for us to look at, well, how did we get here? Right? And how do we do it different? We're going to have to do, my view, we have to do it different. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, may we do it differently, starting with our own hearts, starting
Yeah,
with fostering
alhamdulillah.
our own hearts of peace and love and mercy and compassion and a recognition of our connectedness and with loving
Hmm.
kindness. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That
And standing
may,
up for the truth, standing up for, every human being's right to live, first of all, but
hmm.
then also every human being's right to have clothing, to have a home, to have clean water. to have food.
Hmm.
Every human being, not just those in our tribe, in our in group.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And when you're taking care of the planet, if you're in a position of privilege and you have extra and you have talent and you can put that toward helping humanity, um, you know, I'll tell you this story. A fellow activist that I worked with, we were saving a beach pavilion here in Sarasota from a use that most people wanted. It would basically become a spring break bar, and it was a very family friendly public beach pavilion. So anyway, his name is Mike, and Mike and I were talking about where he grew up, and he grew up in this he lived in this small town in Louisiana. And he was telling me that all the kids in Louisiana played basketball. And there's
Mm.
this great book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers, and it kind of speaks to this dynamic. And he said, Kathy, every year the high school team in our Louisiana town went to the state championship in basketball. And his point, when we were talking about this, it was like the kids they all played and they all learned. It wasn't that there was just this preponderance of basketball talent in this town. It was the
Mhm.
fact that it was cultivated, that this town cultivated the basketball program and all the kids played and it was a community effort. But it just meant that they became quite good at it. What would the world be like if we had a commitment to nurture all of the kids, right? Like there are future Einsteins all over the world. But if
Yeah.
we don't educate them and we don't feed them and we don't clothe them, and we don't inspire possibility, these artists and, scientists and all don't don't develop. Like, let's develop each other. And it there's so much that we can do and cultivate in this world. And so if you're cultivating your corner, then that's great. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, there's a lot of reason to be hopeful if if
Well,
we
may
take
we all
one.
cultivate our corners. And
Yeah,
Kathy, thank you so much for being here and for this conversation.
sure.
And
Thanks for having me.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
And thank you to all listeners for joining us on Beyond Names. Before we go, if you would please take one breath, pause, and reflect for just a moment on what stays with you from this conversation with Kathy. May something you heard today help you reconnect with the light in your own heart. May you grow in compassion, clarity, and courage. May you find your way again and again back home to yourself, back home to the divine, however you name it. And if today's conversation spoke to you, please like, share, and comment on this episode, and please follow Beyond Names. To make an appointment with me, please visit habibboerger.com. Until next time, may you be light, may you consciously participate in growing your light, and may you share your light. Peace be with you.
Amen.